how do you turn down the volume? Like I imagine, Kat and Nat, I imagine this imaginary volume dial, literally in my own head. When I hear my inner critic come out that says, Jamie, you're not qualified, or you're not enough, or you're all these things, I have to literally imagine myself turning, or by the way, sometimes it's our partner. Sometimes it's our friends and family who love us. Sometimes it's our kiddos. Sometimes it's whoever. They mean well, but they say something like, are you sure you should quit your job and go after that? Or what do you know about doing that? Or, all the things, right? And they mean well, but I've learned to like literally imagine this volume dial, and I turn down the volume on that. And I have to, and this is a daily thing, by the way, still to this day, I have to like intentionally imagine myself turning up the volume on other words that replace those words that I know are true, even when they're hard to believe. Like, oh, you might have no experience in beauty, Jamie, but you're gonna figure this out. Like you've always figured it out, or you're gonna work hard, or you're not gonna let no stop you. All those things, right? Every single person listening right now, it is so easy for us to see our setbacks and our hard times and our things where we feel like we're not enough, or we didn't go to the right, job, or we don't come from the right family, or we don't come from the right zip code, or any of those things. It's so easy, like, to think that, okay, so here's what I'm destined to do. And again, it's wild, the power of, because I believe everyone has a calling. I believe everyone has more than one purpose in their life. And I feel like the things we go through, and by the way, let me just be real honest with you. You want me to be really honest? I didn't even connect the dots until just now with you about the diet shakes. I've never shared the stories I share in this book. I've like 95% of them I've never shared with anyone ever, right? My family's going to be like, you're drinking diet shakes in the bathroom in school, right? So this is like a lot of like, it feels so vulnerable. But until you just said this right now, Tom, I didn't even put the dots together of that. When I was sitting there drinking diet shakes in the bathroom, it's because I didn't feel like I was enough. And I felt like, oh, if I can just be this size, I'll be happy, or I'll be loved, right? Those are the things that we don't even realize we're thinking in those moments. But those things we go through, whatever those hard times are in different forms, right? It's like, oh, wow, they actually, if we do pay attention, they can become our message, our mission, our superpower, right? But I'm putting two and two together live with you right now. And I do a lot of this in the book, but never on that one moment. And I just want to share it in case someone else out there needs to hear this right now, that if we really pay attention to everything we've gone through, and it sets us up for what we're called to do. Even when we think it's stuff we're embarrassed about, or want to hide, or we're ashamed of, or we're ashamed that something happened in our family, or that we made a big mistake in our lives, or had a big misjudgment. Those things can truly, if we pay attention to them, not only help us refine our intuition, but literally turn into our superpower, right? And when I think about the journey, because the beauty industry is crowded, there's a million brands. And when I entered that space, it was impossible to get department store floor space because it was dominated by all the big companies. And, it's like, sometimes we have an idea or a dream, and it's very easy just for that simple fact of saying, oh, it's been done before. There's a million other people doing it before. And hearing you talk live now too, one of the things I'm reminded of is every single person in your whole audience, in the world, frankly, nobody can do it the way you're going to do it if you live your truth. And when I think about the decisions along the way of when all the department stores told me no, when everyone said, you're not the right fit, you're not this, you're not that, I'm also realizing live with you right now that you're right. In the bathroom, I've never had this conversation with anyone, by the way. In the bathroom, drinking those diet shakes, I understood at a deep level of pain, the idea of not enoughness. I also understood the power of community, of understanding and seeing the light in other women. In that case, it was girls. We were young, seeing the light and the beauty in other girls when they're not seeing it themselves, but still not seeing it in myself, and having that understanding, right? And that through line then all the way through the investor telling me, you know, women, I don't believe women will buy makeup for something that looks like you, your body and your weight. It's like going all the way through that. By that point, when he told me that, I had a lot more life experience. I made a lot more mistakes, and I could actually hear my own gut tell me he's wrong. And I made the decision to trust myself, right? So, you know, it would be a lot longer before we finally got a shot on QVC, and a lot more no's after that investor still. And it's hard in life when nothing around us tells us we're right. You know, it's hard to then listen to that gut and keep going. But for me, it's everything. It's everything. And to use your wife Lisa's example, you know, I think we all have it, but maybe it's a superpower to actually learn to hear it and to trust it and to trust ourselves. You know, for me, it's life's greatest journey. For me, it's how we all step into the person we're born to be versus talk ourselves out of ever becoming that person.
Who's your biggest critic? And you can guess who they said. I'm assuming it was themselves. It was them. It was,
Yep.
you know, them sitting there and being like, I am my biggest critic. And you just said you got a million no's. Like, is this
I love your mug. It's my book.
Oh, listen.
Is this a woman thing? Is this a man thing? Is this a learned thing? You obviously went through it.
But somehow going through with all those no's, which a lot of these women are like, if I heard that many no's, I would just quit. How the heck do you deal with all those no's and then continue to believe in it?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for asking that question, because I think when we share these no's and we share this rejection, again, back to what you guys do every single day, helps everyone feel less alone. So thank you for even asking that. I think this is huge, because when you Google my story, you don't see that. You just see like a fairy tale Cinderella story. And I realized from getting so many DMs on Instagram that, you know, women think like, oh, did you just have connections, or did you just get lucky, or did you? And I'm like, no. And a big part of the journey was handling the no's and how. So thank you for asking that. Yeah, just to use, I guess, one quick story that's an example of this, that maybe, because I think everybody listening right now probably has rejection in some form. And then how do you handle your own inner critic from like not taking over, right? I think when we listen to our own inner critic, and when we turn the volume up on that instead of learning how to turn it down, I think we end up literally talking ourselves out of our own truth and our own calling and our own purpose in this life. And so I think one of our greatest journeys, literally every human being, and especially every woman, and doubly now that I'm a mom, because I've been CEO of a $1 billion company and I've been a mom. Being a mom is harder. Hands down.
Listen to that, ladies. Listen to that. $1 billion company. Mom is harder.
Mom is harder. And I also noticed since being a mom too, which I love that you guys talk about this a lot, but my inner critic has gotten louder, and you know, comparison, all those things that every human being deals with, I think gets doubled down on us when we become a mom. And so I think learning how, and you know, I talk about this a lot and Believe It, this idea of how do you turn down the volume? Like I imagine this imaginary volume dial literally in my own head. When I hear my inner critic come out that says, Jamie, you're not qualified, or you're not enough, or you're all these things, I have to literally imagine myself turning, or by the way, sometimes it's our partner. Sometimes it's our friends and family who love us. Sometimes it's our kiddos. Sometimes it's whoever. They mean well, but they say something like, are you sure you should quit your job and go after that? Or what do you know about doing that? Or, you know, all the things, right? And they mean well, but I've learned to like literally imagine this volume dial, and I turn down the volume on that. And I have to, and this is a daily thing, by the way, still to this day, I have to like intentionally imagine myself turning up the volume on other words that replace those words that I know are true, even when they're hard to believe. Like, oh, you might have no experience in beauty, Jamie, but you're going to figure this out. Like you've always figured it out, or you're going to work hard, or you're not going to let, no stop you, all those things. Right. And I try to just turn up the volume on those things. And I think every single person in our daily lives needs to do this, because what I think happens is we end up, right. So when I went on this 3-year journey of hearing no's, the first 3 years of my company, and we got down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was personal and company combined. And I was like, I kept feeling in my intuition like this, I was supposed to be doing this. Like I was supposed to be creating this makeup company that solved my own skin problems and also helped to shift culture around the kind of images we see for beauty. And I just had this big dream and it kept feeling right. But sometimes like we start to second guess our own gut when there's no proof around us that we're right. And so for 3 years, it was like all the no's, all the beauty experts like Sephora and all the department stores and QVC, they all said, no, you're not the right fit. We don't want to bet on you. We don't think you'll make us money, right? All those things. And when you have experts telling you they don't think you're going to make it, and then you have, there's no proof around you that you're going to make it, and then you have friends and family worried about you. At the end of the day, learning how to turn down the volume on all that, including your own self-doubt, and like hearing your own gut. For me, I've done a million things wrong in my journey. And I share all those too in the book, but like one of the things I did right was I learned to hear my own gut, and I made the decision to trust myself when it said keep going, and I'm supposed to be doing this. And that changed everything.
I feel like a lot of people, they fail, or they try and they fail. And then they're like, well, I don't have it in me to do more. They just feel so crushed by failing. And, Kat and I, sometimes we joke because we were never, super successful like in school or in any of the traditional things where other people were shining. So we're like, every time something doesn't work out for us, we're almost like we have great practice in failing. We're like, if something really turns out well, we're like, well, this is new, this is very exciting. But when you say like you learned how to like trust your gut, I think that like that inner, it feels like it can be such a small thing inside you, and people want to tune into that and they want to hear it. It's like in their mind, they know what they have is a great idea, but they need to like, they don't know how to do it until they can hear their gut.
Is there a feeling in your, what's the gut?
How did you find it?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. I'm so excited to share a thought with you really fast. I have a question for you, if it's okay to ask. Do you guys think that part of like what you do now and why you're so successful everywhere, which I'll just say that about you because it's true. Do you feel like you're not afraid to fail, and that's a big part of it? And that's a big part of it.
I think it's sort of our detriment too, because we also are shocked when we're successful. And I think that when you learn, I dropped out of high school, when you learn to not be afraid or ashamed of what or who you were, you let go of all these expectations. Like so many people are afraid to say, I can't afford it. I just can't afford it. Like, I don't have the money. Like I can't go out for dinner because I have no money in my bank account. Like all these secrets that we've been taught to keep or not share, I'm having a hard time with my husband, right? I'm not, but like, all these things where
spread rumors.
No, like it's like you have to constantly front yourself. And I think that we're gifted at our gift is being okay with our flaws.
But I also think that like, although they were traditional failures, I think what it sort of showed us is that we don't have to follow the path where everybody else is successful. Like I remember when I wasn't going to be able to afford to go to university, which is, you guys call it college, but not a community college, but university. I couldn't afford unless I took out loans. And I also didn't have the marks to get in. And I remember someone saying to me, like, you're never going to get a job if you don't go to university. And I was like, I remember thinking to myself, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think I can be successful and not have to go spend all that money for the 4 years and maybe study something that may or may not apply to a job or something I want to do in the future. And so like the failures that look like failures to other people were sometimes just like if they were successes in other ways,
Totally. And one thing you just said too that's so powerful is that when that person told you that, you already knew that they were wrong. You had that feeling. Like you knew, right? So you trusted yourself in that, which I think is huge. And one thing before I forget, oh my gosh, then I want to share something. This is so big, what you just said about failing, I think too, and just sharing too that like for all of us, right? Because I'm part of your community too, and appreciate you, everything, how you guys show up in the world so much. But for me and everyone else part of your community right now, like listening to this, I think this is huge, because you watching your success and your impact and all the things in real time, and then hearing that you're not afraid to fail, right? I think this is so big, because when you look at like all the research, it shows even women, it should, like, so many studies show that women won't ask for a raise until they meet 100% of the qualifications, or won't ask for a promotion, whereas men at 60%, right? When they meet about 60% of the qualifications, they'll ask for a raise, or they'll ask for a promotion, or apply for a job. And for women, it's 100%. And it's because from the time we're little, we become sort of people pleasers, perfectionists a lot of times, and also we're scared to fail, and we wait until we think we're going to have it perfect to go, take the dream and take the big step and launch the thing. And I feel like that is such a disservice, because we end up literally never stepping into the person we're born to be. We end up staying in our comfort zone, like letting it chip away at our soul. And you guys are living, breathing examples. And I hope and pray I am too, because oh my gosh, there's been so many things where I've been like, you know what? It's because I wasn't afraid to fail over and over and over. And I wasn't afraid to get rejected over and over and over and over, that this eventually happened, right? And you know, one big thing that that stands out to me is, you know, we were a couple years into our company and just hearing no's from everyone. I didn't know that one day the company would be a success, but I just kept having this feeling, kind of like when you just described, the person said, "Oh, you need to go to university to make it," and you're like, "Oh no, I don't think so," right? I just kept having this feeling that I was supposed to be doing it, but I didn't know how we were going to survive. And a couple years into the business, we got a call from a potential investor, and I was so excited because we were down to no money. And this investor ran this big private equity company, and they invested in all of these consumer product companies that we all buy in the grocery store, like big names and they invested in a lot of them when they were teeny tiny, before anyone knew them, and made them in household names. And I was freaking out because I'm like, oh my gosh, if they invest in our company, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. B, maybe they can use their leverage to get us into these stores that are telling me no. I was so excited, and we started the meetings, and meeting after meeting, and we got to the diligence phase, which is where we show them, future product launches and projections and all that. And it came down to the last meeting, and I thought it was the day my life was going to change. And I'll never forget, my husband and I flew up for the meeting, and we were standing there about 3 feet away from the head guy. And he thanked us, and he said, "We really love your product, but it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in it cosmetics," right?
Aww.
And I sat there and I said, "Okay, can you tell me why? Can you give me some feedback?" Because feedback's usually a gift. And I'll never forget this moment in my life. It was a defining moment. And I think so many people will be able to relate to this, because we all have these moments in different ways. But when I asked him, like, "Oh, why is it a no?" He looked at me and he's like 3 feet from my face. And he said, "Do you want me to be really honest with you?" And I said, "Yes, please." And he said, "I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight."
He did not. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Freaking lying.
Oh my God.
And I sat there, and it was wild, because for me, a lifetime of body doubt, like flooded my body all at once. And I was watching these words come out of his mouth. 2 things happened though, and this is your story reminded me of this story. 2 things happened in that moment. I mean, listen, I went to my car and bawled my eyes out. I had to figure out how to not replay those words over and over forever. But in that moment when he's literally 3 feet from me saying those words, I remember, like, distinctly, I remember having this feeling in my gut, like deep down inside, like, he's wrong. Just like what you just said about university. I was like, he's wrong. And I knew it, I felt it. And I also realized, oh wow, this dude is passing on investing in my company, because he's just as much, I don't want to say a victim, but impacted by the whole beauty industry too, that tells you to look a certain way to make money, right? So it fueled me more to keep going. And one last thing to share, just because I think, like, it's fun when we share our victories too, is 6 years later, the day L'Oreal acquired It Cosmetics, they did a big press release. So it went everywhere when the day I sold my company. And it was all over the homepages of Wall Street Journal and everywhere. And I hadn't heard from him in 6 years. And I actually got an email from him. And he said, congratulations, from that investor, the guy that said no. Yes. He said, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I was wrong. And wow. Yeah. And this is the cool part about life is I learned like it would have been the most successful investment in his firm's history, but also cat and nat, I'm telling you, there's a famous saying, rejection is God's protection, which you could also say rejection is the universe's protection, right? It applies differently for everybody. But like, had he not rejected me, I was so desperate at the time, I probably would have given him the majority of the company for almost no money and thought and been grateful because he didn't believe in me, even though it sucked at the time. It was so painful. Fast forward 6 years, we were still the biggest shareholders of the company when we sold it. So it was like life change. So thank God he didn't believe in me at the time. And anyways, sometimes we get these rejections and they suck, but like, I try to keep that faith.
I think it's so important to remember though too that failure and rejection aren't like just because you can handle it doesn't mean you don't feel it. So you can totally feel like you can get it. It can get you down, and that I think a lot of people think that rejection and failure. You just when you have gone through it, there's no. You're kind of like, I'm immune to it. It's fine. It's good. No, you can still definitely. But how do you move through it?
And if you don't feel it, you don't grow from it, right? Like if you don't feel anything, you might be a little bit too medicated or something. But you have to feel.
That's okay.
You got to be able to still feel, and yeah, to be able to feel it exactly. If you were just like not feel it and carry on, you wouldn't have learned that wasn't the right person for you, and that wasn't the person that was going to put forth your company the way you wanted it to be, because you absolutely needed to be the leader of this company for it to be the way that it to sell the way that it did and do so well. And if they had put, who knows who you would have put in your place.
I love that you share that it's okay to feel it. Cause yeah, even to this day, I feel it. I feel hurt to this now. Anytime I get rejected or anytime like a friend doesn't show up for me how I hope they would, or you know what I mean? I mean, to this day, it like will destroy me inside. And I think it's good to share those things because I think a lot of people are embarrassed when they sob their eyes out for days, or they feel like it's a weakness. I don't think it is. I think
it's when you get rejected, that feeling of rejection is like, it's ironic you share that story because we were out in LA for TV and we got a huge deal in February. Fast forward, and
it was a year ago. It was the best
our
call
agents were like, "This is unheard of. This doesn't happen." Our agent at WME called us. Fast forward to April, the deal's done because of life's COVID. All the circumstances, maybe
or protection.
Yep, or protection, and it was like a major. It was like what? It was another knock, but it's again, it fueled us to go, all right, where can we go next? How can we call? So I think what I love about what your book and what you're talking about, and, everyone needs the book because women often, you see someone who has an idea and then you see the success, right? So I actually use Sarah Blakely as an example, who I don't know much about, but mad respect, because she obviously started it in her university room, Spanx from here to there. But her story is, you see that she had the idea and then you see her building of success, and the in between. Everyone can say, I had hardships. It was really hard. I had no's. But when you can't relate to the story of a man sitting there and telling you to your face the reason you're not successful, it's very easy in your own brain, because storytelling is what brings us all together. When you can actually take the humanity in someone's story, then you can relate it to yourself.
I want to talk about when you said, I found comfort in knowledge that being underestimated can be a superpower. It sounds really great, right? Like we both have had experiences where we can now look back and say, oh, you just got to go, you got to push, you just got to believe it. What do you tell, again, that mom that may be home folding the laundry, or that guy that's, just got a divorce and is feeling on the down and out? How would you tell them to believe it. Like, even though someone's told you no, or even though you're in that struggle, like, believe it.
Right. So I think the very first thing is knowing and believing that, like, every one of us has this person I believe we're all born to be. And I think most people never actually become that person. I think most people end up, for a lot of reasons, staying in their comfort zone, almost letting it chip away at their soul, because I think that's what happens when we stay in our comfort zone, and also like talking themselves out of their own truth, right? And I think the very first thing in order to believe that people need to do is make the decision they want to, right? That's the most important, because a lot of people will never make the decision that they want to learn how to believe in themselves, that they want to learn how to believe it's possible to step into all of who they're born to be. And I think that, there's a lot of lessons I've learned that now I really share as tips in the book on how to do this, because I think we're all on a journey. Once we decide, you're like, yeah, I want to, become the person I was born to be step into all of who I am, then there's a lot of, it's a journey, a lot of things we need to do. So, one quick story, and then some tips on what to do for that is, on underestimated is, for me, I feel like I've always been underestimated for whatever reason. And I think sometimes when we're kind to other people, we instantly are underestimated. I think sometimes, you know what I mean? And I think that, one moment, for example, and I think you can use people's underestimation as fuel. And I think sometimes it becomes 360, and it really works as grace in your own journey. And some people might say, a lot of people say, oh, well, things happen for a reason, or the universe is always right, or God always knows what he's doing. And there's a lot of, if you're someone that's always underestimated, I don't think it's an accident. I think that it's actually supposed to be part of who you are on your own journey, and the things that you become strong enough to overcome and smart enough to overcome, right? And one example is, this was before our launch on QVC. We're a few years into this company. I'd started in my living room, thought it was going to be, great. And meanwhile, we got down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was our personal and our business bank account. I don't know, Sean, if you've ever, I would go to the ATM if I needed $20, and I'd hit no receipt, right? I couldn't stomach seeing the receipt. And,
yes. Yes.
Right. And we finally got this call that I thought was life-changing from a potential investor, private equity company. And they loved our product. And I was like, oh my gosh, Sean, this is going to be huge, because this particular private equity company had created, or I should say invested in and built a lot of the products we buy at the grocery store. And they turned in a lot of consumer products from unknown into big household names, huge companies. I was like, oh my gosh, if they invest in us, A, we're not going to go bankrupt. B, what if they can use their leverage to get us into all these retail stores that are saying no? I was so excited. And so we started doing meetings with them, and meeting after meeting, we started the diligence phase, which is when we show them all of our projections and the future products we want to launch and all that stuff. And I remember the final meeting, and I thought this is going to be life-changing. My husband and I flew up to this meeting, and we were standing 3 feet from the head guy. And he said to me, we really love your product. And we want to thank you for everything, but it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in your company. And I said, and I was so used to hearing no at that point, right? So I was like, okay, but can you share why? And because feedback's usually a gift. And
right.
And he was literally 3 feet from me, and he says, do you want me to be honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And then he literally looked at me and he said, I just don't think women are going to buy makeup from someone who looks like you, with your body and your weight. And I remember as he was saying this to me, I remember I felt my whole body flood with a lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt. And it was so weird, because I didn't get mad or even hurt in that moment. I felt this crazy feeling of my own fear staring back at me, first of all, as he was talking. And I felt this deep feeling, this deep knowing, I should call it, that he's wrong. But I also knew if I was ever going to prove that, I would need to figure out how to believe it for myself, right? Because that's literally half of it. And I thanked him for his time, for his honest advice. And here's what happened in that moment. And by the way, I think this is the defining thing for so many people out there dealing with rejections and how to handle them. Our human nature, our humanness wants to go to a victim mentality, anger, all those things. Like, oh, F him, what a jerk, like all those things, right? But it was like, of all the things I did wrong, this is one of the things I did right, where I was like, oh my gosh, it hit me. He was passing on investing in our company because of my weight. I was like, wow, he is as much of a byproduct of the beauty industry his whole life as I am, right? It's like, wow, he's making business decisions because in his whole life, he's just seen one type of beauty on TV or in magazines, and he doesn't believe any other way will make him money. And I realized this why is so deep. It's so powerful. Like, not just, oh, let me create products that work. It's like, and by the way, oh my gosh, I'll go off on this for an hour, but so many people, because I've seen so many people fail, right, in their businesses. And I feel like it's because they create their mission, their why, and it just sounds good. Like in this case, my why could have been like, oh, I want to solve my own skin problems and I want to help other women and other people and other men and other people that are the same. And that would be a great why. And it would sound really good. But it wouldn't have been deep enough to keep me going in all those hard years. And a lot of people have these whys that sound great, like, oh, I want to pay for my kid's school and one day, or I want to buy a house. And like, those are great. And if you tell someone else that why, they'll think you're amazing. But literally, it's not deep enough to the core of pain inside of you that's going to keep you going during all the hard times that face most of us, right? So like in that moment, he was obviously completely underestimating me. I also knew I'm also underestimating myself and have to figure out not to. But I turned it into like fuel for that like deep why, like the real why I needed to keep going. And here's the crazy thing about when we trust ourselves and we learn to hear ourselves and trust ourselves, which is like half of my book on how I figured out for me how to do that in a lot of cases and how other people can as well. But like when we believe and trust, whether it's in the universe, whether it's in a power greater than ourselves, for me, faith's a big deal. I believe stuff's divinely orchestrated in my life. And so many times these huge, painful rejections or setbacks or no's like suck in the time and they're devastating and they don't make sense and they're not fair. But like years later, right, we can look back on them and be like, oh my gosh, that was grace. Because had this dude said yes to me at that time, Sean, I was so desperate. I would have been like, take most of the company for like anything, just help us survive. And it's like, instead, because of so many people rejected me, I couldn't even give my company away for a little bit of money for so many years. And then by the time, fast forward many years, and we did bring on some investors toward the end, but fast forward to 2016, when L'Oreal bought our company, I was still the largest shareholder. And that changed my life, right? And had he said yes to me back then, like, who knows what I'd end up owning. And the day, and by the way, we met with L'Oreal for 3 years. I was really hoping to partner with them because I was like, oh, they could take our vision and scale it globally really quickly. But they said no for 3 years. And when it eventually was a yes, L'Oreal announced that it was their largest acquisition in US history, and it was this all cash deal and this big thing. And I got an email from that guy, from that investor, the day of the deal, because it went on the Wall Street Journal online, the homepage and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And he said, congratulations on your deal. I was wrong. And also I learned it would have been the most successful investment in his company's history had he said yes, right? But he underestimated me.
You talk about your why running deep, right? And it sounds good. But I think you proved that when it wasn't just about you. I mean, he was saying no, like not everyone looks like the person on the cover of a magazine or a beauty magazine. Not everyone looks like that. So and I would be bold enough to say, that I believe that that's maybe 10% of the population. So you're excluding 90% of the population because of what you think beauty is, but not really going to the person that maybe they have beauty inside of them and this is what's going to bring them out. And so, I just really want to commend you on not just having something that sounded good, but it made you like help other people feel good. And you said something earlier about what you were born to be. And I know that this subject it was very emotional in the book. And, as a person that never met their biological father before, you also transcended finding out a secret that would devastate most. And you, again, had to believe it and believe in yourself. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Can you just share just a little bit of that?
Thank you. Yeah. And really fast, one thing you asked me earlier, I just realized I forgot you said for people in that moment when they're shaking and how do I get through this? What did you do? What was your mindset? It's exactly what you just said. Like I forgot to answer you. So just to share it really quick in case it's of value. In that moment, when I'm shaking on live TV and I feel like everything's on the line, exactly what you just said, Sean, I knew it can't be about me or I'm effed. I'm done. Because literally, if you want the real truth, I was wearing double Spanx at the time. I'm like, my dress feels tight. Is my Spanx absorbing all my sweat dripping down because I'm freaking out? That's what's going on in my head, right? And if I stay, there's that famous saying, if you stay in your head, you're dead, right? I knew this is not about me or I'm going to fail. And it was like in that moment, that's when you dig deep and you call on your why. It's like, oh, this is like for every person out there watching who deserves to see who deserves to see me calling real people beautiful and meaning it. Like that's what it was about. And so in that moment, the only way I got through it and didn't fail was like, I had to make it not about me. It had to be about something so much bigger than me. It was just too much pressure to handle. I think I couldn't have made it through, let alone connected in an authentic way where people are going to keep their channel on me, not turn it off, and consider buying the product, right? And that's the thing and that's the other thing is your mission has to be so authentic, because had I shown up with this why that was great, but not like the deep core, I don't think people would have connected the same way. And anyways, so I go deep in the book on some personal stuff. I would say 95% of this book I've never shared are stories and lessons I've never shared before.
I get a lot of questions from listeners who, because of the things that have happened in their past, they don't know how to trust their intuition. And I get a lot of questions about decision making and how to truly, in a situation like this, where you are burning through your entire life savings, you have left your dream job, you have gotten no after no after no after no after no. How do you stay connected to your intuition in a situation like that? What tool do you have, or what advice can you give to somebody who's having trouble hearing what the right decision is in that kind of situation?
Yeah. So I think that intuition is like a muscle that we build over time. And I think it's a lifelong journey that, to really learning how to hear it and to trust it. And one of the greatest tools, I think, is to think back to times in your life where maybe you had this gut feeling to do something and everyone around you said, don't do it. So you listen to them, you didn't trust yourself, and then think about what happened. Right. And then similarly, go back to a time where everyone was like, oh, no way, no way. And you're like, but I love him. I don't think he's lying. I think his phone really did break 5 times every weekend. He didn't disappear his phone. Think about that situation when everyone was telling you something and you didn't listen, or even your gut was telling you, right? And you didn't listen, and you think back to those times and you start to develop pattern recognition of how it felt in moments in your life when you trusted yourself or didn't, and what happened. And you get better attuned
to what that feels like. So
What does it feel like for you in both situations? Like, can you describe what it feels like for you when you're like, yep, no, that's a no? And what
yes.
does it feel like for you when you're like, I'm sticking with this?
Yeah. Often it's the tiniest of feelings in my gut, right? Some people describe it as like a still small voice. I pray about it. I ask God to give me the answers and I try to live the answers.
Do you feel the answers that God gives you? Like, is that what happens for you when you do this?
Like right now, when I look at you, right?
Yeah.
Like I know you're a beautiful soul, right? I just know it. You know it. You feel it. Like I feel like you have good, like you're good. You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
feeling, right? And we get these feelings, but so much around us is so loud. You know, and we just learn over time. And by the way, not to go, this could be a whole other episode, but especially as women from the time we're young, we learn not to trust ourselves. We walk in to our parents fighting and we go, is everything okay? They're like, everything's great. Everything's great, right? To protect us, we start to learn to
You're
doubt
like,
ourselves.
baloney.
Right?
Yep.
But you know, or, you know, especially as young girls, you learn to make decisions by consensus, often with your friends
Or
and
making other people happy.
making other people happy. People pleasing. We're rewarded for pleasing everyone else and almost ignoring what we feel. So if you're someone who's an adult right now going, I don't even know how to hear my own gut or trust myself. That's why we've been trained out of learning how to do it, right? So it takes intentionality and really deciding, oh, you know what? I'm going to put in some time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, just to thinking about moments in my life where I trusted myself, where I didn't. And if you don't remember any of them, start now.
You know what you just inspired me to think about? I don't even know if it's possible to do this. But imagine if you could go through the rest of today and only make decisions that align with what you truly want. If you
Yes.
don't want to go to that party tonight, don't go. If a friend asks you something and you feel obligated out of guilt to lend them that thing, don't actually lend them the thing.
Yeah.
Eat what you want to eat tonight for dinner. Don't just go to wherever your friends want to go. Like, I think that would be a real eye-opening experiment if you were to do that.
And you start building that muscle, right? And the more you do that, some people don't even pay attention to what they actually want to eat for dinner. They're just like, what sounds good to everyone? But to your point, when you start paying attention, then you also start building that knowing of hearing your own knowing.
Do you think it's possible to discover your unique purpose in life if you are not connected and listening to your intention? And intuition, I mean.
And your own intuition. Here's how I think it's way more likely and you're going to actually discover more than one purpose often if you're really tuned in to your intuition and you're intentional about it. But what I'll say for someone who feels like they can't hear their gut but they still want to find their purpose, a friend of mine, Rory Vaden, says that you're best positioned to serve the person you once were, right? Trent Shelton, our friend, says one day the things you're going through right now will be the things you made it through.
Yeah.
And what I would say to someone listening right now is look at something in the past that has broken your heart, that has caused you grief, that has been something that you care deeply about, whether it's positive or negative, that you've gone through, something you care deeply about, or maybe pain you've gone through, something you have made it through. I believe often when we go through the hardest times in our life, it's for one of two reasons.
What are they?
It is to either equip us with the strength we need to carry the weight of our success that's to come, to carry the weight of our purpose that's to come, or we've gone through these horrible, unspeakable times, things we would never want to happen to us again in our life, because we're actually going to get our greatest source of fulfillment and purpose by one day helping someone else who's going through them. And
I love that saying that you're best equipped to help the person you used to be.
Yes. Yes.
You have interviews today. And I know lots of our people here, they go live or they have to do that post or they have to show that video or they have to take that important call. How do you prepare? Because confidence is a lot about preparation, getting yourself in the right place to serve. How do you get in a good place to knock out these interviews today?
Yeah. So for me, it's a lot about the topic of, actually, Joel Osteen said this best, that what we say after the words "I am" change our whole life, change our day, change our moment, right? In this season, I haven't worked this hard in many, many, many years. And I worked hard for a lot of years.
So hard. Oh my God.
I have not worked so hard in this book launch. I mean, it's 20-hour days, 7 days a week right now. It's a lot. And I'm so grateful. I'm doing it because I believe in every ounce of my being. This book is going to bless so many people. There are so many people that need to reignite their own belief in themselves again.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm intentionally donating 100% of the proceeds and my author royalties to causes I believe in, because that actually gives me an extra boost of energy as well.
That's a
And
motivation. That's a drive. Yeah. Show up for other people is a big part of confidence.
Yeah. And I think a really big part of confidence for every single person is starting that to be truly mindful of what are those words we say after the words "I am," right? To use it, to say it the way that Joel Osteen so beautifully said it. And what I mean by that is, you know, what we focus on magnifies, right? What we put out there is what we pay attention to. And so to build confidence, to go into a day like today with 4 interviews. And by the way, my very last show today, at the very end of the day, is Jay Shetty's show.
Oh yeah, Jay. We love Jay. It's
great. Although I'm doing 4 shows first, I'm like, I have to be, you heard me on Clubhouse last night. I was a mess. I was like, so I'm like, okay, you know, I got to pray for that I'm articulate and I can serve his community and add value. And so one thing I've been doing, just to share, but this can be every day in your life, whether you have a book launching or you are just trying to figure out how to feel the day more and feel more joy, is just starting to really be mindful about what are those words we say after "I am." And what I mean by that is, I am so tempted, and I catch myself saying, "I'm so tired. I'm so tired." But it's like,
I'm
okay,
exhausted. I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed.
Yes.
I can't handle it. I am unworthy. I am ugly. I am, like, all these things we say to ourselves.
And those words have power, right? And those words take on a life. And part of optimizing my own energy and my own confidence in this process, because, by the way, as a first-time author pouring every ounce of my being into this book, I'm also tempted to have thoughts like, oh, I'm not qualified to be an author. All the thoughts that we think, right? Our inner critic. And it's like, okay, nope, you got it. Like, I'm trying to be mindful of every time I have a thought like that, replacing it with something that is true that I need to focus on.
So good, though. I hope you all hear this. It's like, so many of you think one day this, like, the negative self-talk or whispers goes away. If it was going to go away, it would go away for Jamie Kern Lima. She's achieved everything. So it's like, okay, you have to go. She's like, so many things people strive for, you know, from family to wealth to impact to goodness to living in your values. But even if you're a good person, and you all are good persons, or you wouldn't show up for personal development. Good people show up for personal development, right? And the challenge is, you know, who was it who told me? I think it was Earl Nightingale who originally said, your ultimate problem is that you think you shouldn't have any. It's like, you're always going to have problems. You're always going to have negative self-talk. It's learning to react better to that, to adapt better to that, to set an intention that is stronger and higher than that. So when the negative self-talk comes up, your purpose, your mission, your identity of what you believed in your prefrontal cortex, which is you consciously decided upon it. So when this unconscious or that physical emotion or that, you know, impulsive negativity comes up and smacks you in the back of the head, your prefrontal left cortex has designed and said to yourself so many times consciously the truth, that the truth of your consciousness goes, hey, I hear you making noise, but you don't get the floor right now. We have things to do. You don't get the floor right now because I don't like what you're saying and I know it not to be true. So you consciously program yourself so many times with personal development over and over and over and over again that when the noise comes up, you're more able to battle it back and grab on to that pull of your truth. Grab onto your pole of your destiny, of your greatness, of the things you've conditioned that I am this, I'm capable, I'm worthy, I'm ready, I'm willing, I'm a hard worker, I care. All these things we've said to ourselves over and over and over again, bam, we're pulled in that direction because we put it into our brain so many times.
And it's so easy to stop doing that, to forget to do that, to not do that. And I think that's really important because the words we tell ourselves about ourselves are they're like the most powerful words, right? And so, if you think about even just, and Brendan, you're in such a level of intentionality with what you do with your high performance planner, with all of this stuff, right?
I have to, otherwise I'm a hot mess all day. Like, geez.
For regular people like me. So no, but seriously, I'm just being super real. I have loved personal growth since as long as I can remember. I would save my Denny's tip money when I was a waitress to buy personal growth tapes, right? Like, I love it. I love it so much. Yet even me, every single day, someone who loves personal growth, I still, yes, if I don't pay attention, I will still default to the words I say after I am, like, and even in my own head, like, oh, I'm so tired. Oh, all the things. And it's like, okay, I think this is a huge idea, even as we are in the tail end of Confidence Week on the Growth Day Morning Show, just for everyone listening and part of this with us right now, to just today even say, what words am I saying to myself or to someone else after I say I am? And just pay attention to it for a minute, because it is so easy to say words that don't serve ourselves, right? And to your point, getting in this habit of replacing those words with I am, grateful, or I am hardworking, or I am a really good cook of Kraft macaroni and cheese, or I am, you know what I'm saying? Like, those are the things we need to put in our heads over and over and over. But we're so busy that it's so easy to not even realize, and just to default to this commonality of human connection, frankly, because think about it, when we connect with so many people, especially in the people in our lives who we love, but don't have an interest in growth.
Yes.
We connect through them so often with things that don't serve us, like, oh, I'm this or that, or this problem happened, right? So it's really just like, okay, to take ourselves up to that next level of joy, of growth, of purpose, of everything else. Those words after we say the words I am,
they matter.
Game changer. Yeah.
Game changer. And this is why Jamie and I are both super passionate about Growth Day. I know we have a lot of members new to the community. I'm watching the comments. If you're not a member of Growth Day, please just go to growthday.com, just growthday.com, because for less than $1 a day for the whole year, you get the best personal development trainers training you and teaching you live, and you get the replays. But here's what's cool, that most people, like, when you're in Growth Day, you can also play those replays or watch it live with your family and with the kids. And I bring this up specifically because that I am part, that negative self-talk, you know when that is formed? That self-talk is ingrained for 20 years of people's lives, on average, 27 years of people's lives before they engage in personal development. So the vast majority of the world, we have this data, the vast majority of the world does not consume, buy, or purchase any personal development until they are 27 years old. Now, you and I had the blessing, we were earlier than that. We were like young and hustling and listened to, like, Wayne Dyer or Tony Robbins or all, Deepak or Earl Nightingale or the greats like Ziggs and everybody, right? So we were early. But for most people, for 27 years, their self-talk has put a groove in their brain. It's like carved an unconscious pattern of talk for 27 years on average. And then here's the sad part. Only 2% of the world engages in personal development. That means that 27 is when most people start, but only 2% start. So most people suffer throughout their 30s from the grooves they set in their teens and 20s. So they suffer in their 30s because they don't engage personal development. They don't realize there's another level for them. They don't realize they can release the pain and release the self-talk They don't realize that there's strategies to improve their relationships or build wealth or take care of their body. And then it gets so bad, bam, the next highest level of personal development happens between 38 and 42, sometimes called midlife crises. All of a sudden, it's like, this is so bad, I have to figure out. Now it's a wound they have to fix because they didn't engage early. And I only bring that up, not to judge, but to say to you all, sign up for Growth Day, because you can also be playing this for your kids to set that groove in their brain early. Or maybe you got a teenager, or you got someone in college in your household right now at taking school from home. What if for 1 hour or 2 hours a week, they were in Growth Day Live with me and the best personal development trainers, diversity from around the country and around the world, from different backgrounds, sharing personal development and psychological advice. And now that groove starts getting set. And so, you know what, because it's hard to overcome later if you don't set the right groove early on. So stick to your personal development, listen to your podcast, be in Growth Day, share that with your family. And I think it just makes a difference for the next generation in a big way. That's why I'm passionate about it. I get
big way.
Right up. The microphone is a metaphor for the sound going into your ears, carving patterns of beliefs into your brain.
Yes.
Right? You got to remember, everyone speaking to you has now made an imprint on your brain. And the more they speak to you, the more that imprint can be thick if you're not careful, or you're not having a stopgap between their voice and your internal voice and what gets wired in your brain. Yeah. And a lot of people's mindsets are terrible, not because they're a terrible person, or even that they had terrible events in their lives. They had toxic people who they allowed to be toxic into their brain so many times, and they believed it, or they just kept allowing it, not setting a boundary or standing up for themselves, or they were in that awful predicament. There was no choice. And it's just this toxic parent or this toxic person. And that's why you have to learn mindfulness. It's why you have to learn to control your thoughts. It's why you have to care about self-mastery, personal development. It's why you have to get therapy if you need therapy, because you don't know that these things have been so hardwired into your brain, but the wiring can be changed. The filtering process can get better. And most importantly, you can create all the new grooves by neuroplasticity by retraining your brain with more personal development that is positive, optimistic, strong, encouraging, believing in you, sharing messages of faith, of hope, of power, of optimism. Like, that's a beautiful thing about personal development, is it helps you craft the mindset that will allow you to be happier more naturally and allow you to be more focused naturally without having to like grit and bear to get happy. No, it's like when you got the right thing going on up here, happiness, focus, intimacy, love, that stuff flows versus like having to like logic it out, you know?
Yeah, so good. It's funny. One thing I want to share too, as we talk about mindset, right? And going forward, a lot of people are starting to set goals again and dreams again and think about, okay, what am I going to do coming out of this season and out of this pandemic? And, another thing that just came to mind, Brendan, to share, because this is really important, right? When I was writing my book, I did a phone call with Bob Goff, and he said something to me that I want to share with everybody. Because for you, listen, everyone in part of our morning show right now, you might not be a book for you. Maybe it's a personal goal or a dream or whatever. He said to me, you need to be careful who you share your book with ahead of time. I'm like, oh,
good.
What do you mean, right? What do you mean? I'm like, do you think I should share it with my family, with all my friends? And he said this one thing, and I'm going to share it with everyone. He said, here's what will happen. I just want to let you know. I'm like, okay. And this applies not just to a book, you guys. It could be your dream, your goal, your hope. He said, I want you to imagine a big group photo, right? Where tons of you were in it. It was a really special event. He goes, when you show someone else that photo, what happens? He goes, they zoom into their own face and they decide if they like the whole photo based on how they look. He goes, to the point where they don't even remember the event, how special it is, what was going on. He goes, they zoom in. He goes, it's human nature. They don't mean anything by it. And he said that. I'm like, okay. So then what happens? I start about 6 months before the book launch, so about 6 months ago, I shared it with a couple of people. Exactly what he said. I thought, oh, they're going to be so proud of me and just like sob their eyes out, love this, know how it's going to impact so many people. The first round of feedback was about them. But I won't say
names.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Always about them. And I just want to share this because sometimes we share a dream or a goal and we're like, I don't understand why this person's not excited for me. It's because what they're doing is in your dream or goal, which they're somehow part of because they're in your life, they're zooming in to how it impacts them,
So good.
how it affects them, right? They don't mean to, they don't mean any harm by it. It's just this human instinct we have. And so they're seeing
So
it through
good.
their own lens of their own limitation or their own experience. And so the feedback that they're giving you is through that lens. And so it's just super important, I think, too, as part of protecting our own mindset, to realize a lot of times based on who we share this stuff to, whether it's a close friend, someone we work out with in the gym, whatever, that's what's going to happen. So, and now I can tell you Bob Goff was right. Like literally every single time.
Because you have to protect that. That's protecting your mindset of your art, of your dream, of your goal, of the hard thing that you're working towards that nobody understands. And I think that's so critical is A, knowing that will come back, but also I always start with the mindset, no one has to understand or approve of or give me permission to do what I love. I don't need that generous feedback or encouragement or understanding, because most people won't understand because they haven't done it. And the people who have done it and understand, they're going to encourage you, but they might not lift you up. They might not support you because they are also doing their own thing. You should never feel upset that someone doesn't understand or encourage your dream, because they have their own beliefs. They have their own dreams. You have been given that gift. That dream has been sown in your heart. That dream has been sown in your soul. They have a different one that has been planted. They have a different one that's been sown in their soul. Let them do theirs and celebrate them if that's your attitude or your personality towards it. But don't worry if they don't get it or support it. You want good, constructive feedback from people who know what they're talking about and who have good, generous intentions for you. Let me say that again. You want feedback from people who know what they're talking about and have good, generous intentions for you. Because some people, they'll give you the feedback and they're smart, but they're really mean. You want the feedback from people who know how to make it constructive, generous. They have intention to see you succeed and do well. Everybody else is a casual observer. It's not like Tom Brady walks down the tunnel and every dude up there screaming down like, run this route. It's not like he listens to them. And you have a lot of people screaming at you who are like, drunken people at the Super Bowl who are just loud and caught up in the moment of their lives screaming at you. You don't need to take their instructions, and you don't need to take their instructions or their feedback seriously, because they're so often either not the expert or they don't have the true intentions for you. Some of you have spouses who don't support you, and I get asked that all the time. What happens if you haven't? Denise supports you so much. What would you do if somebody didn't? I was like, well, if they didn't, that would just have to be a very difficult and candid conversation. And that would have to be held lots of times in faith, in good trust, in love, with clear expectations and clear communication. And if we didn't get there, then we got to have a very serious conversation. But also, maybe they don't need to. Maybe it's okay, they're doing their thing and you're doing your thing. And you can find the support, encouragement, love, and cheering on from somebody in your industry or your neighbor or your friend. Your spouse doesn't have to be everything for you. Your spouse doesn't have to be your crutch. There's some things, maybe it's okay your spouse thinks you're crazy, but they let you do it. Maybe they don't encourage you, but they're just like, whatever. And I just really believe that we've gotten into a society where we expect our spouses and our partners to be everything for us. We want them to be our banker, our tax advisor. We want them to be our conflict management consultant with the neighbor. We want them to, wash the car and pick up the groceries and cheer us on. I'm more like, get the support that you need for your goals and dreams from those who can provide it. Like my mom doesn't read my books. She doesn't read books. She's not a book person. I have people, some of my closest friends in my world, never seen a video of me, don't care. And I don't take that as a slight. I have one friend, he saw a video of mine and he totally dropped this awesome insult. It was so funny. And he did it on a group text. And it was actually completely right. He's never supported anything I do. And he's one of my best friends. You don't need everyone cheering you on. You need your heart to know what your true north is, and you need to follow that. Whether it's dark, whether you have companions, whether camels are spitting on you or not, whether you know the path, It's about you finding your own personal power. And that's what personal development has taught me. All personal development comes back down to self-reliance in some way or another. Not that we don't need community.
Yeah.
Not that we don't love feedback. But if it's required for you, it's going to be a long, hard, difficult, bitter road.
You know, I think that
Cheers. That sounded really negative. Cheers. Oh, God. Thanks for the motivation, Brendan.
The analogy you gave, though, two things about this that I want to share, because, you know, I
thought the camel spitting on people was funny, but no one laughed. It's one of those things
I
think in my head at the time.
Spitting. I've seen you. Never mind. Okay. So, so two things. On top of self-reliance, I also think, as a person who's like super sensitive and empathetic, I also think there's, you know, this idea, why I love this morning show so much is because I think that also life isn't meant to do alone. And I think for so many people, they don't have anyone around them, whether it's their partner or anyone else, that is supportive, or that gives them the support that fills their soul. And so, you know, I just want to share that for everyone watching or listening. That's like, I'm screwed. I have no one that's like, okay, well, you
go build it.
Build it. Absolutely build it. And, you know, I talk about this whole story in my book about how I assembled people in my inner circle around me that don't come from the same kind of upbringing or family or background or faith or anything that I do, but all have this huge heart to love. And I talk about how I did that because I needed to build that inner circle around me, right? And we can do that on our own journey in life. And I also think that's a big part of this morning show is, you know, sometimes you get your support in communities like this, where you're around people that are thinking the same way you are, even if your you know, family and friends aren't. And one more thing I want to share really fast, because your Tom Brady analogy was so brilliant. And he doesn't go out the tunnel and start checking in with each person. What pass do you think I should run? Do you think I should rush it or throw it? I think that's accurate. Right. He's like, boom, he knows. And what I want to say for women, and for all of the women that especially that are in this community right now, live with us and watching the replays, so many studies show that women will tend to do things by consensus before they're confident enough to then go with something, right? Meaning they ask everyone else's opinion and take a survey, and we want to get consult from everybody. And then I feel like part of our greatest journey in life is learning to hear our own knowing and then trust it and then go with it, right? And so I love the story of Tom Brady, because every one of us is the Tom Brady in our own lives. Yet we stop on that when we're walking out the tunnel on the field. We know, but we're stopping trying to get consensus from everyone else, right? And at the end of the day, it all becomes so much noise, and we start doubting our own knowing. So I love that example, because I think every person can channel that in some way, whether they're a football fan or not. They're like, oh yeah, you know, because no one second guesses what play Tom Brady calls to run, right? Because he trusts himself and everyone trusts him. And I think for us, that journey is trusting ourselves too, as we go after our dream.
Building, I think the most important, I want to share something that Jamie did for this new stage of her life. And I hope you will find it empowering. We have to build the community that we need and desire in order to achieve specific goals and dreams in our lives, because not everyone around us is going to get it, and they don't have to. Stop pushing your dreams on other people that they have to understand it and share it, people. What you have to do is go, oh, if these people don't get it, I need to build. For example, I wanted to become a book author. None of my friends where I grew up had any clue how to do that. So I didn't go to them and start talking with them and try to brainstorm. I was like, no, I went to seminars that were made for people who wanted to write a book. And I learned how to write a book from people at seminars who were writing books, right? Jamie, she's starting this different type of phase with a book launch, a live event, which, by the way, she has coming up next week for free. There's a link pinned in Instagram. It's just becomingunstoppable.com. So she's doing this. She's doing her first book launch. She's doing her first live event. And what did she do? Well, she went out and met all of like the community of people already doing that. She went into a new community, met all the people, tried to add value to everybody, got to know everybody, was lovely to everybody, and now she has a support. That support, I want you to understand, that support did not exist 3 years ago. So if you have a dream or a project or goal, it's your job. Go find that community. Go add value to that community. Go build that community. Don't sit there and go, I don't know anybody who, I don't allow that in high performance. In high performance, we go, listen, it's not your job to wait for the cavalry to come in. Your job is to go out to assemble the army, baby. Let's go. That's your job. That's self-reliance. You go assemble the army. Don't complain you ain't got one. That's the job. Jamie, who has unlimited reach and resources in so many ways, she still did the grind of having to go meet all these new people to support this new goal, this new project, her book and her live event. Literally none of that existed 3 years ago. Is that right, Jamie? Like none.
Right.
She built it. And I'm like, and why? Because she believed that she could. I celebrate Jamie. I hope you guys all too, because she didn't just sit and wait and hope. She was like, no, I'm proactively going to build the community I need to cheer me on, encourage me, and support me. That is what I'm going to do because I have this dream. And that's what I'm going to end with today.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Jamie Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.